Hi, and welcome to the Your Story Studios podcast, a podcast where we talk about all things content creation. And today on the show, I'm joined by a man who needs absolutely no introduction. But for those who may not know who you are you and what are you doing here?
Yeah, so my name's Matt Smolen. I'm the director of Balloon Tree Productions. So we're an end-to-end video production company, and we work with brands to engage their audience through creative and impactful video. I've been doing it for 13 years. I kind of know nothing else, but I'm also a dad of two, and it's a really big part of what I love about my life is that I've kind of got that good balance of work-life balance and everything in between.
Or you can tell me how to achieve that work-life balance because I'm really interested in that.
It's very difficult.
Yes, I have learnt so far. Tell me, Matt, how did you get into video production?
Yeah, so I grew up in Ballarat, little country town, about an hour and a half out of Melbourne. And my school did a lot of drama and theatre. It was a big theatre town. So my introduction into the arts was through the stage. And I did a lot of acting and singing and all that sort of stuff as a kid, but started getting a taste of directing pretty early on in sort of year 11 and 12. I think I could be wrong, but I'm just going to claim it anyway. I was one of the first students to direct the senior school play at my school, which was a big deal at the time. They're like, we've never had kids direct this thing. But it was such an amazing eye-opener into just creation and collaboration with other people. At the time, I also just mucked around with a handycam like most kids in our industry did. So we had a family camera, I'd take it on trips and things like that. So when I finished high school, I actually moved in with a buddy of mine who was similar. We did a lot of theatre stuff together and just had this handycam. We'd just shoot silly videos in our spare time. So I remember really distinctly we did like a Reservoir Dogs parody down our driveway, all in like oversized suits with like mops of hair, just like looking real cool. We did, those kind of classic split screen, you talk to yourself on the couch kind of things, and just all of the stuff that as a kid you're playing and experimenting, but learning through doing. And so when I went to uni a couple of years ago, I went to a couple of years after I went to Deakin, I just started an arts course because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. I was picking up the film subjects as electives and going, this is actually great because I'm putting a lot of theory and a lot of the knowledge onto what I kind of learnt practically by doing, and sort of then could marry up, I understand now why a wide shot into a mid shot into a close-up, so that sort of brings people into the story and has a purpose and the reason behind it, rather than just going, this works because I've learnt it through osmosis. So I then pivoted and went to a Bachelor of Film and Digital Media. And at the same time, that friend I used to live with, this can get a little bit complicated, but his sister started dating a guy who started a real estate video company. So this was back in 2009, I think, 2008, 2009, where it was like just kicking off. The DSLR revolution was happening. And so this guy with a couple others started a real estate production company, and they were doing auctions and property profiles and things like that. And James, my friend, got a job just working casually for them and was like, hey, we need camera operators. Like, do you want to see if you can get a job? So while I was at uni, I started casually shooting auctions on the weekend, or on days off, I'd shoot property profiles and stuff. So learnt at uni all of the theory and sort of applied that to what I'd learnt by doing. At this job, I learnt all of the kind of practical business side of it, of working to time and budgets and all of that sort of stuff.
Because that's stuff you don't learn in uni.
100%. And you could tell instantly, like the rest of my cohort, particularly when I graduated, it was like, well, what do we do as a job now? And I was like, well, this is what you do. Like, you quote these things, you go out for a couple of hours, you shoot a thing, it turn around in this time frame to make it worth the budget. So yeah, when I graduated, I went full time with those guys, and young, naive, didn't know anything kid, but just had the most amazing opportunity to learn and develop. And so then naively, a year or so into that, end of 2011, I started getting a few more freelance gigs and sort of connections. And I went, there's a job here that if I do this, I can probably live on the money for about 3 or 4 months if I live on just like meagering noodles and be a bit savvy. So I quit my job and went freelancing full time. So that was, August 2011, and have been working for myself ever since. So, yeah.
Amazing. So that's how you started. What are you doing today?
Yeah, so I as I said, run Balloon Tree Productions. So we're a team of 5, and we do everything from social media content, TV commercials, through to live streaming, podcasting, and kind of everything in between. Our niche, or our specialty, is really coming at stuff with a creative, unique, interesting angle. Because I think there's a lot of corporate video production out there. A lot of businesses need video, and there's an amazing amount of talent out there that can shoot a great interview, throw some B-roll in there and cut a great thing. For us, and my own passion, like I love comedy, I love parody, I love just juxtaposition of some really disparate ideas and making something really unique from that. And I think that I've really gravitated towards that kind of work in what we do at Balloon Tree. So we've really tried to carve out a corner of work we're known for kind of coming in and disrupting what is expected and going, let's challenge the brief, let's do something different here and really, really make an impact in a way that other production companies might not be able to. We're really out there just trying to do fun stuff, but it's fun stuff with a purpose. It's got to drive forward whatever the business objectives are of who we're working with, or the organization we're talking to needs to still communicate and get their message across. But if we can do it in a way that's going to really resonate and be memorable to that audience, then we've done our job.
So do clients come to you and give you a brief and say, this is what we want to do, and then you go, nah, we're going to do this?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes. Like now we're in a pretty fortunate situation where they go, you guys are fun and creative. Like we've got this opening video for a conference. The theme is this. What do we do? And then we kind of get the crayons out and go, here's 5 different ideas. What do you think works? And here's some budgets that attach to that. Other times, we've done a bunch of Back to the Future parodies, and it's like the perfect alignment of the client comes to us going, the theme of this is looking back at where we've come from and the future from today and where we're going. And we're like, let's just mash it with Back to the Future. We can do all the little parallels of like your head of optometry is Doc Brown. Like this just sometimes it just falls in your lap and you're like, this is just play it as it lays. And so they're like the perfect sweet spot where we can lean on all of our, extensive pop culture knowledge and filmmaking techniques, put it into a circumstance that a business is going to pay for it, but also they then get to see, I sort of describe it often as like, there's so much assumed knowledge in an organization that there's all this baggage with the people that you see on screen or the messaging or the business plan that they're rolling out. If you can attach that to something that everybody else understands as well, that assumed knowledge just feels like you make those people feel like the smartest people in the room. They're like, that guy's that guy from that movie. Oh my God. And like, if you can start connecting those dots for people in a way that they feel really clever because they've drawn those comparisons, but it's a really deliberate point on our part, that's the best thing. So yeah, a lot of times it's collaborative. Like I think we do get briefs and we go, this sucks. Like this is not going to be as engaging as you want it to be or as inspiring as you want it to be. Here's a bunch of ideas to make it different. And sometimes you kind of come back to where you started with. We kind of call that exploring the neighborhood. It's like if you're going to move somewhere, you don't go, oh, I like that house, I'm going to move into that house. You go, well, this is the house and the street it's on. What's around the corner? What's the park like nearby? All the stuff in the neighborhood's really cool. We really like that house. Or maybe you like this part over here a little bit better. That's kind of the approach we take to most projects that come in, whether they're fully formed or very much just an idea at the start.
Yeah, cool. And what kind of clients do you find are attracted to your company?
Yeah, it's often larger brands. So some of the ones you'll see on the website and the showreel are like Specsavers, Boost Juice, The Good Guys. So these are big national organizations that most people have heard of. And I think the reason it resonates and we work really well with them is because there's a lot of brand guidelines and sort of brand voice and tone of voice that has to be adhered to. And I think if you find the balance of being able to adhere to that in a unique way that can still sort of challenge the way they present this information going forward, that doesn't feel like it throws everything out the window that came before, that's a really great partnership because these businesses are huge. They're often quite slow to move and pivot. But if you can kind of come in and go as an extension of their team, say, here's how we can support you in this thing. We'll take this off your plate, present it in a really unique way, and you just need to sign off it. You guys will look amazing because of it. It's a really good fit. And I think, we're a bigger team. We're small, but, there's 5 of us. So we're not the single videographer coming in. Like there's a price point attached to working with us, which often it means larger brands have the budget to put towards working with us. But at the same time, the value exchange there is very much like you're getting a team to work with you and you need the team support because of the scale and the volume of what they've got to produce. Yeah.
Yeah, great. And you've mentioned that you've landed big brands. How did you land them?
Well, isn't that the $1 million question?
It is. That's why I'm asking it.
Yeah. Look, I wish I had a secret sauce other than just like be a good person and don't burn any bridges. So my first, look, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this to this camera. Danny Ginsberg, I owe my entire career to. Basically, there's my first freelancing client was a retail training consultancy. So they'd go into organizations. It was a lot of fashion. So like, remember it was G-Star and Glassons and stuff like that back in the day. And they'd basically overhaul the whole customer service training and e-learning sort of stuff. And as part of that, I was brought in to film like the conferences and the presentations and some customer interaction trainings and things like that. Danny, who was a really good friend of mine at the time, I'd met through just some local theatre stuff. And he was one of the trainers there. He then left and went to Specsavers. And we got along very well. We very, very aligned sense of humour, like both loved Back to the Future. He was a big part of moving those projects forward down the line. But Specsavers already had an organisation, or I don't even know if it was a person or a team that they were working with, but he was there for a couple of months, went, these guys aren't great. Can you come in and just like pitch on this thing and demonstrate what you can do? And so I remember the first job I did for Specsavers, just, sole, videographer, just me, running my business for probably 6 to 12 months at the time, walked in going, this is a massive opportunity. Like, don't stuff it up. So I remember the little bracket arms that you could put on a camera. So it's like the little horseshoe mount. Then it was like, it would then go to another two. I think I ended up doing like this weird tree of like a Zoom recorder and like a light or just like this absolute behemoth of a thing on a slider, like all by myself, like absolute chaos.
But it looks impressive.
But it looks impressive. And the end result, like they were blown away. I think it was a Men in Black parody. So even early days, I was still brought in to do some pretty kooky stuff. And so I remember just doing that and going like, just make the best impression and just go, anything is possible. We'll figure it out. And we landed that job, delivered the job, and was like, the big boss at the time was like, let's have a chat about future work. And I was like, well, we just came to an agreement of some rates and away we went. So we've been working with Specsavers for like 12 years now. And like realistically, and knock on wood, it doesn't change anytime soon, but like they could bring a team internally. Like they're that big. They could work with another production company far bigger than us. They could work with smaller videographers. Like there's so many other options. But I think the reason we've stayed such close collaborators is because of that understanding, right? And it's really about going, well, this is what you need, not me trying to go, well, you need all these lights and all these sliders and all these whatevers. It's like, no, if you need to shoot this on a GoPro, like let's just shoot it on a GoPro. Like really understanding that need. All those other brands that I sort of mentioned before, it's so often like word of mouth and referrals. And it's like you make a good impression, you work with people, you leave them feeling so valued and really supported. Eventually they leave and go somewhere else, or somebody else says, hey, that video project you did, who worked on that for you? If you burnt that bridge and it was awful and you kind of like stamped your foot and went, this is the way we're doing it, they're not going to be like, yeah, use Matt, use Balloon Tree. They're going to be like, it wasn't great, talk to somebody else. So over time, it's like it's expanded to this really great roster of brands we get to work with, all because the experience has been really memorable and positive. And I used to say it's luck, but it's like it's an intentional thing. Like one of our internal mottos as a team is be the highlight of their day. Like, you often, especially in corporate work, they sit at desks, they're in meeting hell. Like it's not a fun place to be. We show up with cameras and lights and we're putting costumes on and doing stuff. Like it's already going to be hard to top that. But if the experience of dealing with us all the way up to the shoot and the post process is just as much fun, they're going to rave about you and want to bring you back. So if you make that experience the highlight of their day, their week, their month, realistically, they would be silly to not come back to you. So that's kind of how it's grown over the 13 years.
Yeah, great. And any tips on creating that positive experience for clients?
Make it about them. Like it's not about you. And I think, there's a real tendency, particularly early on, where it feels like gear is the only important thing, right? And to a point it is, like it needs to look good. You're brought in to do a professional service, but the client doesn't care if you shoot it on a FX6 in 4K with the brand new aperture light. Like they don't care. They want to know, does this outcome solve my problem, right? You're selling solutions, not videos. So if you can kind of take your own creative ego out of the equation and really filter everything you do through the person you're dealing with as a person who has their own pain points, their own challenges. They're working in an organization, maybe they've had this like project thrust on them by their boss and they're under the pump to make it work or whatever it is. If you can make that whole experience just as stress-free, as comfortable and as successful as it can be, then they're just going to love you for it and want to come back. There's a time and a place to talk about gear and the technical side of things, but I think by and large, the stuff that gets forgotten about is just you're dealing with people that need problems solved. And if you can solve problems really well and they go, well, this is great, like you're the problem solver, it's a no-brainer for them to come back again and again and again. Because why would you try something different or try a different solution when you go, well, these guys, I can trust them. They'll just do it. And I know it's great. And I pay them this, we get that. It's a simple equation. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a shoot yesterday where I was working with people where the video was thrusted upon them.
Yeah.
And for me, the way that I made it as easy as possible was it was a talking head to camera. So almost 20-minute script that they needed to present to camera. And fortunately, I had a teleprompter for them to read. If I didn't have a teleprompter, it would have been so awkward. Like, oh, can you just hold the piece of paper below the camera? And no, we're not doing that. That will look horrible. So yeah, just little things like having, I guess, the right gear to make things a little bit more enjoyable is a good tip for people to, make their clients a bit more happy and want to return.
Yeah. And I really look at, like, we try and always send out at least 2 crew members on a shoot. And it's usually a DOP and a director or producer. And oftentimes, like, we get pushback or questioned on the cost of a second person, the director. Like, what are they doing? We can ask the questions, whatever. And the thing I always come back to is that, like, we're not even necessarily there to ask the questions. We're there to, like, be head of vibes. We're like, particularly if you're interviewing people that aren't, comfortable on camera or it's their first time, so much happens before you hit record on the camera that sets the expectation and the experience of what's going to happen that is, in a lot of ways, quite intangible, but you work with enough people and enough, you know how to sort of massage them into feeling really comfortable. So I know, like, we did a big project for an aged care company, and the details of the project I won't go into, but it was quite sensitive about essentially mergers and acquisitions of small, independent, struggling companies getting brought into a bigger national organization. So there's a lot of sensitivity around, like, community and feeling like this, big business taking over and just kind of ironing out anything that made this unique and individual in the first place. And to the client's credit, they really wanted to just dive into this warts and all. And so I'm conducting these interviews with, small townsfolk, people that have never seen a camera in their life. And I'm going, like, tell me how this was, you were about to close because you're about to go bankrupt. And, what was this process like? Like, they need to feel comfortable and supported in that environment. So it's not even on the shoot day. It's like 2 weeks before, jumping on a call, having, a couple of phone calls so they know you, they understand your approach. And it's not just like show up on the day with a camera going, right, okay, tell me about this time that this thing happened. Like, they need to be warmed into the experience, feel safe and supported and encouraged to open up and be vulnerable. The last thing that anybody wants in that situation is to feel like there's kind of big spotlight on their face and it's like, tell me all your secrets. Like, it's not conducive to a good project. So it's the same thing when it's a project that's got more levity to it as well. It's like people might feel self-conscious if they're going to wear a silly costume or do a dance number or whatever it is. So, like,
some people thrive on that.
Some people thrive on it, and it's you just run with it. But, like, really understanding the bedside manner and how to deal with people before you put them in front of camera is a big part of the job we don't talk about a lot. And one of the things it's really hard that on a quote from zero to make a tangible sort of line item, but it's a big part of that experience thing that people go, I just felt so good afterwards. Like, I was terrified and blah, blah, blah. And I left, I felt good. I felt supported. The end video, you can see I had fun. Like, what an amazing experience. If you can't create that, it feels quite cold and quite clinical, and it's a harder experience to sell back into somebody again when they've already felt a bit uncomfortable. So yeah, it's a really big part of how we approach things is try and really consider the experience of all of those involved, not just the stakeholders you're talking to, but on-screen talent, anybody in the background that might be there that can sort of involve themselves in a future decision. Just make them all feel like it's the best thing they've ever been a part of.
Yeah, great advice. And looking forward to the future, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're in a really privileged position to be able to be involved in so many great communications tools. And I think, I don't need to tell you, video's clearly one of the big movers and constantly evolving in the world as we speak. So I think it's partially remaining very, very nimble and agile and seeing the way people consume videos and adapt to that, but also just constantly using the opportunity we have to work with these great brands and say, let's do stuff differently and let's really create something unique and special. Because I think more and more where everybody's in information overload, whether it's inside an organization and all of the internal comms going on or externally with all of the marketing we're exposed to, like, you need to stand out, you need to be memorable, you need to be unique. And I think the place for creative ideas and creative ideation is only going to have more of a place at the table. And so if we can just really lean into that and go absolutely ham on creating some fun, cool stuff, then I think we're in a good spot.
And talking about the future, do you see AI as being an integral part of creating those ideas, or do you think the human element just needs to be there?
Yeah, I think AI is a great tool. I don't think it'll replace human creativity. I think what it does is I've been doing a lot of thinking on it, and I think AI synthesizes what already exists, which is great. It's really good for distilling information or sort of regurgitating stuff that you need to kind of understand in a simplified way. But in order to create something new and then also have the understanding of how a human's going to interpret that, I don't know if it'll replace that anytime soon. Yeah. I always kind of lean back to parody and genre because it's sort of my go-to ideation sort of phase is like the juxtaposition of two things. You go assumed knowledge, something else that everybody understands. When you put it together, the human understanding of that combination is what makes it work. And so how do you synthesize that in a way that makes sense without all of the human context understanding it? I'm not quite sure you can yet. What it can do is help go, well, here's a whole bunch of ideas and here's a whole bunch of information on what these things are. But how you piece them together in the really human way is where our magic will always stay. And so I think that, if you remain blind to the evolution in all the AI and technologies and stuff, then you might get left behind. But I also think that like letting it be doom and gloom and hover over you like the big grey cloud, it's going to do your head in. So I think be aware of it, embrace it where you can, but also back yourself as the creative person to really just lean into that creativity and human element. Because that's, and hang on, I'm going to get on my little soapbox here. I think it's like we're also seeing so much more content generated by AI, and there's a real push for people to just keep posting content and be present in people's lives. And people are relying on AI to do a lot more of that because of just the volume that they need to produce. But I'm pretty confident we can all spot a ChatGPT post a mile away. We're going to kind of bounce back the other way and just crave human authenticity and flaws and mistakes and stuff. So, my wife, who's in marketing as well, and she was saying that like she often gets some ChatGPT stuff to write some things and then goes in and just ruins it with poor grammar. And it's like, because we as humans see bad spelling and a misplaced comma or whatever as like, oh, some human wrote this. There's fallibility in this. Whereas I think AI, it's just so clean and homogenized that we're all going to go, no, I don't want this anymore. I want human flaws and all interaction content. I just want to embrace that again. So that's kind of my little AI rant.
That's all good. And to finish off today's episode, Matt, what words of wisdom do you have for our audience?
Yeah, I honestly I think it's lean into what makes you different. I think whether that's your approach to, working and setting up a company or starting a business, or even posting stuff yourself or just the way you conduct yourself, I think we're in a world where niching and sort of individuality is what's making people stand out. It's no longer the 3 TV shows on a night and everybody talks about the one thing. Like we're all consuming tiny little bits of content and it's all sort of fractured and splintered off. That I think in order to really feel fulfilled yourself, but also kind of carve out your own corner of the world, leaning into what makes you different is the way to do it, because then you've got a unique special sauce, whatever it is. It might be your approach to creating something. It might be, a hat you wear, like whatever it is, you do you. But I think differentiate yourself, lean into what makes you different, and you can't go wrong.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, for joining us on the Your Story Studios podcast.
Pleasure.